Hello and welcome to the Macon Atlanta podcast. I'm your host, Brent Macon, and this is the first episode we have shot inside of a business. We're at the Little Gym today, and we interviewed Jane Mills, who is the owner of the Little Gym of Decatur and Smyrna in Atlanta. She started her career as the gym director at the Little Gym of Smyrna and then bought it from the existing owner and has since been in the system for 20 plus years. And so Jane brings a wealth of knowledge, and this is perfect for anybody listening who's thought about SMB ownership. We talk about what it looks like to exit a corporate path and go down a small business ownership path, pros and cons of that, and then certainly Jane's thoughts on the gymnastics landscape, what it does for kids, and what it's been like to be a Little Gym owner for the last 20 years. So thank you, Jane, for joining, and without further ado, enjoy this episode of the Macon Atlanta podcast. Jane, thanks for coming on the Macon Atlanta podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Would love to learn how you decided to buy the Smyrna location of the Little Gym from the original owner. What was that process like?
Sure. So I started at the Little Gym of Smyrna as the director there. I'd been working there for about a year and a half when she decided to sell. Her family was relocating, so she was selling. And at the time, I was like 25. I had no money, nothing to my name. So I was like, there's no way I can buy this business. Didn't really think about it too much. She didn't sell it. Like, she had it for sale for quite a while. I think had some interest in it and nobody moved forward with it. And then after almost a year, I have my uncle who owned several locations of a franchise called The Great Frame Up. He was like, yeah, you should try to do it. Like, you should look into it. And she's trying to sell it. It's been almost a year. Maybe now's the time. So I started that conversation with her, and it actually ended up being a pretty quick process by the time we really started talking about it, which is good because it was a little bit tense and it got intense at some moments, but it was like maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And I just loved working there so much that a lot of it for me was, what else am I going to do? I don't know what other job I would have. I've worked in gyms since I was 16. I don't know what else I would even want to do. And a lot of it was, I don't want to see this place close. I don't want to work anywhere else. I just want to keep it going. And so we found a way and made it happen.
Had you thought about being a business owner beforehand? Like, was that on your radar?
It was. I had thought about that, but I did not think that it would have happened so soon. I thought, maybe down the road, starting my own thing, whether that was my own gym, dance studio, something like that. I did not think it was going to happen as soon as it did in my career.
Sure. And how did y'all structure that sale? Like, was there some seller financing degree in there?
There was, yeah, there was. So my parents actually took out a home equity loan to help me fund it, which I paid every dollar of, but my parents literally put their house on the line for me to buy the Little Gym. So.
So how long? So a year went by from when she put it up for sale to when you bought it.
Yeah.
And then how long was it until you owned it outright from there?
I would say 2 months.
Okay.
2 months. So.
Wow. And what sticks out in memory from that initial period of ownership? If you're at that point 26 years old and all of a sudden a business owner, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was in terms of when I took over as an owner, I had pretty much been running the gym for the last year. She was not a present owner. She was pretty absent. I was doing pretty much everything anyway, staffing, payroll, teaching a ton of classes, training everyone, like I was doing it all. So when she sold it to me and moved on, it was not a huge transition. I know I remember the staff being very excited about it, which made me feel great that they were so excited that I was now like
way better than the opposite.
Yes, exactly. But that I was like officially their boss. Like, I'd been their manager and director, but not like the boss. But they didn't even really know her because she wasn't around a lot. So, but I remember, I just remember them being excited and ready to kind of like move into the next chapter. So
How often does that happen within the Little Gym system, that someone goes from a gym director to actually buying and becoming an owner?
I've heard of it happening a handful of times. I can't say it's super common, but I do know a handful of other owners who started out as directors. Either they worked in the gym and ended up buying the location where they worked, or they went on to own their own location. And actually, my current director in the Smyrna location is opening her own location soon. So it's bittersweet for me because I'll be sad to see her go, but I know how exciting it is, and she's an amazing director. So I know she's going to be awesome at being an owner as well. So,
And so 20 years on, you still own the Smyrna location.
Yes.
And then how have you aligned on a growth strategy and kind of right sizing for you in terms of how many locations to own, what's too few, too many? How have you navigated that?
Yeah. I think that it's been more for me about where the locations are than the amount of locations, I think. I had another location that was in a different area, and I found that I just wanted to be a little bit closer to my locations in terms of like knowing the area, knowing more of the customers, having just more of that like hometown community feel. It was a little less natural when I had a location that I was not familiar with versus I had lived in Smyrna. I'd been there for a long time. I don't live there currently, but at the time I did. And so I knew the area very well. And that really helps, I think, to get to know your customer base. And, you can just talk to them about, they want to know where other things are, whether it's for their kids or this or that. And that could be great. But I have found that having 3 locations, I had 2, which was good. And then going from 2 to 3 gets even more challenging, of course. But I think over time, I've kind of found the system to be able to run those other locations or really run all of them without being that super hands-on owner every single day in the business, because that's what I was used to. I was so used to, I'm there every day. I know every single person that comes into this gym. I know the parents, the kids, the grandparents, whoever it is. I run into them at the grocery store, out and about in the world, and you have to let go of that a little bit to open more locations. And so that was kind of a big shift, was like, oh, I want to know all these people, but I don't, because I can't be in 2 places at once. So that's definitely a shift where I want to still be able to have those connections with the customers, and not have so many that's not possible at all. But recognize that in order to have more locations and have the Little Gym be available to more kids around the city, it's just not possible to be there in every location every day.
Yeah. How many Little Gyms are there roughly now in Metro Atlanta, and then more broadly?
I believe there are 10 open right now, with 3-4 up and coming, maybe even 5 or 6 up and coming. I believe the Little Gym franchise as a whole is somewhere around 250 to 275 across the country.
And did you ever consider like trying to have all 10 in the Atlanta area, or trying to roll up and be part of kind of a larger ownership group? And how did you think about that? What was and wasn't appealing?
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily having 10 was ever really my goal, or hadn't been something I had thought about or even thought was feasible. And I think a lot of that does come from that like owner operator mentality. When I started out, like I said, I was in there every day. I was teaching half the classes, and that's kind of like, that this is what I'm used to. This is how I do it. I'm the one answering the phone, all of it. And how do you do that if you have 10 locations, right? And of course, the answer is you have to hire people to do a lot of that for you. But that vision was not something that had ever really been presented, or something that I had necessarily thought much about. I see more possibility in it now, that my career has kind of taken a different path and shifted. But at the beginning, early years, I would never have thought that having 10 would even be an option.
How has your leadership style and experience of the business evolved in, the second decade of ownership here? What's different now? And then what's not different now? What's still the same? What's endured?
Yeah. I think what's different is, again, being able to let go, to delegate, to have a trusted person running the business, a trusted director that you can say, here's what I want you to do. Now I need you to go do it, versus always being the person that's doing it all. Or when somebody needs to step in, not always being that person, right? Having another person, having a backup that can come do that. And a lot of that, honestly, like when you're 25 and single, and you can do those things, right? You can go work 6-7 days a week, open to close, 12 hours, and then go live your life at night and do it all again the next day. And, you get a little bit older and married and have kids, and there's a lot more balance that you want to work out. So having somebody else in charge, I guess, is what's shifted a lot, and putting trust in them to do that. And I think what stayed the same is just kind of like trying to keep the roots of the program itself. I don't teach nearly as much as I used to, but definitely pop into some classes every now and then, going to the Little Gym events to stay connected to the franchise community. And, with all of the friends I've made and people and owners and directors that I've known who have been also doing it for just as long, that's a huge part of why I've stuck around for so long too. So,
yeah. Totally. And I feel that. And we're obviously recording in the Little Gym of Dunwoody, which I own. And that's about a 30-minute drive, no traffic from my house. And at the worst of Atlanta traffic, it's much longer.
Yeah.
And so to your point, it's a lot of times in the late afternoon, I'm making a trade-off of, does the business need me here right now? Or am I going to get home in time to have dinner with my kids?
Yeah.
And obviously in the macro, the business needs you there. In the micro, in a certain day, it might not, but you're constantly like making that trade-off and trying to figure that out.
And I think something else that's shifted, just not for me personally, but in the city of Atlanta, is 15 years ago, there weren't nearly as many kids in the city. So I live in the city. I had a location, the one I opened and then sold up in the suburbs. And over time, as I had kids, I just saw this need for, there is nothing for these kids to do inside the perimeter and in the city. And we are like bursting at the seams with kids now. Sure. So that's when I wanted to kind of change my focus geographically and focus on opening locations in the city where I live, where I see the need for these kids at our school, the playground, like everywhere we go. And so that was a big part of that decision as well. So.
And I just alluded to one of the, I think what's a pro and con of small business ownership, which is there is both in the micro some degree of flexibility, but then in the macro, like you got to be there. There's not.
Yeah.
I feel like small business ownership is having, small and medium business ownership, SMB, is having a bit of a moment on social media. And a lot of it is kind of romanticizing an escape from the corporate world, which probably is not totally fair. But I'm curious, like when you think about small business ownership compared to other career paths, what do you see as some of the biggest pros and cons of the small business ownership route?
Yeah, I mean, I have never worked in the corporate setting, so I can't really speak to what that is like. However, there are a lot of pros and cons to small business ownership. Yes, you can get to a point where you set your own schedule. You work as much or as little as you want within certain parameters, I would say. And that is your prerogative, and you can make that choice. However, there's a trade-off of, well, now I'm paying somebody to work those hours. So would I rather have that time to myself? Or would I rather have, the money that I'm paying and save that payroll? But at the end of the day, it's also, you have to be willing to step in and do anything, right? You have to be willing if things take a turn, if there's a bad day, whatever the case may be, you have to be willing to step in and handle it. I have gotten to the point where I do have a lot more flexibility in my schedule. I do a lot more from home these days so that I can spend the time with my kids. But there have still been days where I've left them to come in and teach classes when just everybody's sick. No, someone has a flat tire. It all happens at the same time. So those things do happen as well. Those are obviously some of the cons, but you have to be willing to do that. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it's been worth it because I've seen the pros in terms of what it's given myself and my family, and of course, what all the kids who have come to the Little Gym have the experience they've had and the families. And that's, of course, the number one reason why I do it, why we all do it. But, you get in here and, maybe you get that 7 a.m. call that so-and-so and can't come into work and you got to jump in and do it. And it's frustrating. And but then you get in here and you're with all these kids and they're happy and smiling and running around. It's like, okay, this is great. This is fun. This is all, I love it. Like, this is why we're here. So,
yeah. Do you have any particular memories that stick out of where you're like, oh, didn't have that on my bingo card for today or this year, but here I am, here we are.
I think there's always those things pop up every now and then. There's days where it's like, okay, well, I have to get my financial reports done, so let me take care of that. But oh my gosh, now the toilet's not working, so I have to go fix the toilet and then go back to financial reporting. And that is like the breadth of things you have to be able and willing to do when you own a small business. And I think just, having instructors, dealing with team and staff, it is always unpredictable. Hiring people is always unpredictable. It's always a risk. You can interview somebody 10 times and they can start and not turn out to be the person you thought they were. So there's always challenges with that. I've had challenges where we're at a conference or a meeting and out of town and, things just go downhill and you have to try to deal with it from afar. I would say the biggest challenge we faced that no one saw coming was the entire world when we went through COVID. That was a lot. Yeah. That was a lot.
How did you all navigate that? What was it like?
Oh gosh. We were closed for 3 months. So most locations were closed for a couple months. We were closed for a full 3 months. I had my full-time staff.
Y'all are on a recurring membership model. So are people stopping? Did the whole business cease? So did your rent pause? How did it get nitty gritty?
So, we were on a enrollment, membership system where some people were paying monthly. So yes, of course we stopped their monthly payments, but some people had paid for the semester. So basically, I think through May. So we closed mid-March. Sure. And immediately we're sending emails to everybody that's don't worry, you're going to have a credit that's going to last forever. Whenever we reopen and you come back, your class credit will be here, because we couldn't have 500 people ask for refunds. No one had that cash sitting in the bank, right? So to, proactively prevent that, that was the strategy. And so we did stop everybody's payment. All my staff went on unemployment because they were all instantly, laid off, furloughed, whatever the terminology was at the time. But we did our best in terms of providing some kind of product. So, there were days where we were trying to do mobile classes from our living room. There were days where myself or a director or two would come in and live stream a class from inside the gym. We did offer like an at-home program where they could follow along at their house, because kids needed to stay busy too. So we did a lot of that. And then when we did reopen, we reopened with like 60 people. We had, super small classes. Like our capacity is 18. We had 6 kids, I think, max.
Wow.
And then we just kind of slowly built, we cleaned the gym from top to bottom between every class, which there were days I would go home and be like, I feel like I just mopped for 8 hours. Like, I just feel like I mopped all day, because that's, we do a class, clean all the mats, and then do it again. And we just slowly built back. And then post-COVID, we all had a massive boom. We had record numbers after that. So, there was that big upswing about 2 years later. So
yeah. What were some of the enduring lessons that you took away from that shutdown process and then the process of coming back?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the moment where it was like, if we can make it through this, like, we can make it through anything. Like, it's hard to envision like what other scenarios could come up, but, and I hope none do, of course, we all do, but it's, when I think about like certain struggles or challenges, and like, but we made it through COVID, so we can make it through this. I had my first location, Smyrna location, through the 2008 recession. A lot of people didn't make it through that, so we endured and made it through. And then going through COVID was way worse. So I think that's like what I always go back to, is like, if we can make it through that, we will persevere. Yeah,
totally. And going back to the threads on pros and cons of SMB ownership. Yeah. How would you advise someone who's contemplating leaving a more well-trodden or traditional corporate path and considering doing something like small business ownership or franchise or otherwise?
Yeah. I would advise somebody to, if you are going to own a small business, to have that be your focus. I know people who want to do both, who want to stay in a corporate role and come do something like this. And maybe there are franchises where that's possible. The Little Gym, I don't believe is one of them. I really, truly think that if this is what you're going to do, this is what you need to do. And maybe it can be done in reverse, where you have a long-running gym and long-term director in a successful program, and you can maybe make your way back if that's what your choice is. But this business is not a side hustle. This is something where the most successful owners are in their gym, watching, monitoring what's going on, building relationships with the customers, and really immersing themselves in it. And, not necessarily have to be like the one and only face of the gym, but being a face of the gym, especially at the beginning, so that customers are familiar with you, is key to being successful in this business. So I think that would be my number one piece of advice, is if you're going to do it, really do it.
Yeah. I saw on Instagram recently, I saw an ad for, I won't call the person out, but it was a broker for SMBs who's trying to teach you how to acquire a business. And the text on the screen was the number of boomers who are getting ready to retire. It will be the largest wealth transfer in the history of our country. Many of these people own unsexy businesses that are laundromats or car washes or HVAC that quietly print bank. That's the text. Print bank. That was that. And I was like, but many of these folks don't have logical successors, and so they need someone to sell the business. And so it's teaching you how you can do that. That's the text on the screen. And then the background is like someone diving into a plunge pool, and then it's like Bora Bora and a yacht. And like the implication here is like, you buy this unsexy business that prints bank, and then you go dive into your plunge pool in Bora Bora. And I'm like, what are these people being sold? Like, it was wild. And so I just think, if you're if you're hearing that, you're like, I won't have to sit behind a desk anymore because I'll be in Bora Bora. Like that's not going to be the reality. You're just trading one set of problems for a different set of problems, and that has a lot to celebrate, but you got to be clear eyed on that.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm curious, like, what do you see as the most rewarding part of ownership and some of the more challenging elements of ownership?
Yeah. So I think the most rewarding is just seeing the growth, not only of the business, but I look back on like where I was 20 years ago and when I first started out, and just kind of like thinking about the evolution of my career, and what has been like what I've built over the last 20 years. And we had our 20-year anniversary in Smyrna last year, which was amazing. And I had families come that had been there, when their kids were younger. I've had instructors come work for me who I taught as toddlers.
Wow.
And so like they were in my class as a 2-year-old, and then they're in the program and they go to high school and they're ready for a job, and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember going to the Little Gym. I loved it. I want to come work there. And I've had several come work for us over the years, which is like amazing that's one of the first things. I've talked to parents. I was once at a restaurant and ran into a group of moms that were on a mom's weekend, and they met in the Little Gym in the Bugs class, and they were like, we met because of you, like we were in the Bugs class. And I remembered them from like 10 years before that, and they're like, our kids were babies and now they're like in middle school, and we're also, they were like having a whole weekend together, and they met at the Little Gym. So, and I hear stories like that from gyms all over the country. And so, it's just seeing these kids grow up it's awesome, and seeing the parents and the experiences that they have and what it's done for their life is like awesome also. So those are really the things that, keep me coming back, keep me wanting to, keep doing it day after day and have more locations so it is more widely available. The Smyrna and the Snellville location, we were the only ones in Atlanta for a decade, since from 2008. And then I opened in Johns Creek in 2014. So for that whole time, like we were the only ones, and then we were the only 3 for a long time until, more started opening in the last few years. So just being able to like bring this program, to more kids is so, it's just awesome to see it. And just seeing how our curriculum and our actual program, what they're doing in here, like what it is doing for the kids and how it's helping them. Like it's just amazing to see it every day and see these kids like take their first steps. And
we're going to keep going on TLG.
Okay.
What do you perceive to be the most challenging aspects of ownership?
So when you are an employer, you're responsible for people's livelihood, and that's a big responsibility, right? So, I think that managing a team is always the hardest part of probably owning any business. Even if you don't own the business, it's challenging to manage different personalities and schedules, and just making sure everybody can work together and keeping their morale up, and making sure they're enjoying what they're doing. And, but you are also the one that has to pay them and make sure that they have that paycheck. They're relying on that to live. They have families and kids in many cases, and so they're relying on that. So if the business isn't bringing in the money, then you have to bring in the money so that you can pay your employees who are doing that job for you. So that's definitely a big challenge. I know for us, kind of going back to one of your previous questions, but we are open 7 days a week. So staffing the business 7 days a week is a lot. We are open like 12 hours a day on the weekend. So there is always that, it's always there. It's always in the back of your mind that something could happen. Someone could call out sick, not come in. It's always there. We have plans and systems in place to make sure everything is always covered all the time. But it doesn't always work out. So we have to be open on the weekend. We serve a lot of people on the weekend. But there are times where, I'm like, oh, what would it be like to just like not work at all and not even have that be, a risk or a thing in the back of my mind for 2 days.
I used to not take my phone to church on Sundays, and I'm like, if there's an emergency, I got to be reachable. So like now I have the phone when I go to church on Sundays.
Right. So, and it's not something that happens super often, like knock on wood, but it's kind of always there, right? It's always there.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we have grown and welcomed folks in the Dunwoody community is we'll run special events for churches or preschools or other organizations, whether it's a parents' night out or they get to come, or we'll do like an open house for their families. And that's a great way for groups. We typically make that available for free to the groups, and they'll come and they'll bring their kids in, they'll get to run around, and it's a great time for parents to connect. Yeah. But that has a cost too, and that's our staffing. Right. And so I'll come up with all these great ideas and be like, by the way, somebody wants to work this, right? Right? Like we totally make this happen. So there's always the trade-off, and it makes a ton of sense on if you're running the business, you got to have people in to run it.
Right. And for us especially, and I say this to the staff all the time, but we're not like a Target, a Publix, a grocery store where if someone doesn't show up for work, we just close a register and maybe our lines are a little bit longer. Like we have to have a certain number of people in the gym for the number of kids that are coming. Like it is non-optional. So there has to be a certain number of teachers and bodies there. Yeah. So, and they have to be trained to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. So back to the Little Gym.
Yes.
Started in 1976.
Yes.
We're coming up on 50-year legacy.
Yep.
What makes a brand endure that long? And like, how have they stayed fresh?
Yeah. So this brand has, it's just so much heart. Like I have been in the gymnastics world since my entire life, and I grew up in a gym that also has a ton of heart. My coach and the owner of that gym is beloved by everyone who she interacts with, who's ever gone there. But I've also worked in gyms that were not like that. And I think when I came to the Little Gym, it's not just in your location, but across the entire Little Gym system. And Robin West and Randy McCoy, who created this program and created our curriculum, they just did it with so much like love for the kids. And that's where all of this stems from, and wanting kids to feel loved and feel successful. And it is just so like such a like warm and fuzzy place to be, because that is what they wanted for all these kids. And that does not exist in every gym across the world. And it's just the part of it that's kept me and a lot of people I know, wanting to be around for so long. And there's such a great community of owners, of directors, employees at the Little Gym International who created such like a family feel for this entire community. And that's why so many of us have been here for so long, because we're just so ingrained in it. And not only are we able to like share the passion of the Little Gym in our individual locations, but then once we all get together, it's like it's there too. And Randy and Robin are not directly involved with the Little Gym anymore, but they are still very much beloved by the franchise community. And, all of us still communicate on a level of just being friends and being friendly. And it's great to still like have that connection with them. So.
And I'm thinking about the competitive landscape, thinking about places that we go and are marketed to. Over 50 years, now you've got the Bunny Hive and you got Kid Strong, and you got a bunch of different swim schools, and seems like as you mentioned, there's more kids in the city. There's more options for kids too.
Yeah.
What makes gymnastics still relevant and the Little Gym still relevant in that intensifying competitive environment?
Yeah, I mean, the Little Gym, I think, sets itself apart with our curriculum. And even though it has changed, it has evolved over the years, we have gotten more, current information as it comes out. We have gotten some new music and songs and activities, but the base of it has not changed. And the base of it is it is completely based on child development and the nature of children and how they learn at every individual age group. So it's not just, hey, 2-year-old, come do a cartwheel. Hey, now 3-year-old, come do a cartwheel. But how does a 2-year-old learn how to do a cartwheel? How does a 3-year-old learn? Because those are different. And just having that foundation, because the way children develop has not changed. So the way our curriculum is presented with that foundation in child development has maintained the entire time. So we're really meeting kids where they're at and setting our expectations and helping the parents to set their expectations for, this is what's normal for a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old. This is what's, and this is how they're going to learn. This is how they're going to take in that information. And sometimes they're going to do it on their own time, and that's okay. But I think that maintaining that base of like the child development and using those resources. We have now partnered with the American Academy of Pediatrics to bring in information from them that we share with the parents too. I mean, that stuff hasn't changed a lot in 50 years. And if it does, we're going to update what we're doing to reflect that. So I think that some of the other programs, it's I don't want to speak negatively about another program, but that's maybe not where the foundation lies. And so it is, it's not maybe meeting kids where they're at quite as much as I think we are.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos has a line that he talks about in the context of Amazon, but he says, people always ask me, what's going to change? Where's this heading? Where's it going? And he likes to think about what's not changing. Mm-hmm. And he says customers are always going to want low prices. They're always going to want things conveniently delivered to them. They're always going to want someone to take their side if they have a dispute. And I think that really translates to this business and this space. It's like people are always going to be having kids. Yep. They're always going to want a safe way for their children to be able to step into their physical bodies, get more comfortable, develop, grow in a safe and fun way. Mm-hmm. And gymnastics just does an awesome job of providing that with the social, emotional, cognitive development that it enables for kids. Like that will endure. And as you know, I'm often preoccupied with what's going on in this AI moment. And I remember thinking about, all right, I don't think AI is coming for kids gymnastics.
No. I mean, gymnastics is one of the only like full body workouts that kids can do from like 4 months old, right? They're working their arms, their legs, their torso, their brain all at the same time. So, I know a lot of kids do, other more traditional sports and soccer and whatnot. And that's, there are definitely benefits to that. But they're not getting that full body workout every single time they're going, every single class. Going upside down helps with their vestibular system, their inner ear. That translates to their equilibrium and their balance. So, I mean, it's all connected. And, like you said before, thinking about like what hasn't changed, like I've seen a lot of changes over 20 years, right? I've seen our gym sizes have changed. Our wall colors have changed. Our membership model has changed multiple times. But what hasn't changed is what those kids are doing inside this gym. And at its core, our curriculum has not changed a lot in 50 years. And that is really what has kept us going so strongly for that whole time.
Yeah. And you mentioned something starting as early as 4 months. Yeah. I remember when I first started learning about it, I had a question that I have now heard many people kind of laughingly
what do they
ask,
do at 4 months?
What can a 6-month-old do in a gymnastics class? What's the answer there?
Yeah. So the answer is a lot. So, we do a lot of exercises that mimic the muscle patterns that they'll use the most as they become mobile. So in their legs, their arms, again, building the core strength. How are their muscles moving when they're crawling? How are they going to be moving when they're standing? What's that, feeling that they're going to get on their feet and in their legs when they start supporting their body weight? What are their eyes doing? We do bubbles in every single parent-child class, and kids love bubbles. But it's also their eyes are going back and forth. And what does that translate to? Reading, right? We read from left to right. So, a lot of parents don't even think about those little things. We're singing songs. We are doing baby sign language. Before kids have the ability to physically produce words, they can do signs. We can teach them to understand and do those baby signs to communicate. So they can do a lot. And they see other babies their age. If they're at home, they're not seeing other babies or really a lot of other adults, mom and dad and other caregivers, but they come here and it's like this whole world has opened up, and oh my gosh, there's other little people like me.
Yeah, at all of the age groups, kids watching other kids, especially those who are one developmental step or tick ahead of them, to be like, oh, that's what the crawling looks like. Oh, I want to try pulling up like they're looking like. Oh, this looks like it would be a good, safe place for me to wipe out, and it's okay, and they can try that too. Like all of that lands well.
Yeah, and if they're not, they're not walking yet, and they come to a birds class and they're crawling, and they see another child a little bit older than them walking, and they're like, oh, I'm going to try that. And I've had a lot of parents say, they started walking once they saw other kids their age walking. Like peer pressure works both ways. Yeah.
I have a 6-month-old today, actually, and I love thinking about him working on his core strength, getting the gains season. Yeah. What misconceptions do you think parents maybe carry about gymnastics or programs like this?
Yeah. I think that for gymnastics over the years has gotten maybe a bad rap in some respects with, that there was a lot of negative publicity around gymnastics several years ago. But, that intensity.
You're talking about from like safety and abuse standpoint.
Correct. Sure. Yeah. And we're not competitive. We're not in that world necessarily, but I think to an extent it just general negativity may have carried over. But just in that intensity of what is the risk of injury? Is my kid going to do something that is potentially dangerous? And, I think for our program specifically, we are very much letting kids and teaching them like at their own level, teaching them those base progressions so that they can build up the strength. And I think sometimes if parents aren't necessarily seeing them do a cartwheel on day one or, all these crazy tricks, if that's what they want them to come here to learn, then it's like, oh, well, maybe they're not learning enough. Well, they have to be able to build up the strength in their arms, their legs, all those muscles in order to do that safely so that they don't get injured. And that's really where that safety comes from, is so that they can actually do it themselves, and they have that strength and that body control to be able to safely do a skill and the next skill and the next skill, right? We're never going to throw them into something that they're absolutely not ready for. I think I talked before about the program at the Little Gym and how we're, the child development. So we have a very open philosophy about kids wandering and exploring the gym. And that is the nature of children, right?
Can you say a little more there?
Yeah. So, when, let's say we're doing, we start our classes with a group hello song with everyone together on the group mat, a warm-up song with some directive music, and then an activity that uses small props, parachutes, sticks, bean bags, all very, high energy, fun, great educational opportunities. But guess what? A lot of 1 and 2 year olds, they see a big playground. They see all this stuff for them to climb on. So they want to go check it out. And that is their nature. And that's how they learn. So I think a big misconception for us specifically is because we encourage that. We don't just allow it, but we encourage it because kids learn through play. So while a parent might see, well, my kid's not participating, my kid's not learning, we're not getting anything out of it. It's like, no, they are learning a lot because they are, first of all, separated from you, which is challenging for toddlers. And they're figuring out how to get up the stairs, how to get down the stairs. It's problem solving. So it takes constant parent education to help them understand that their kid isn't, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not participating. They're not disinterested. They're just learning on their own. They're exploring, and that is how they learn. Yeah. I worked in a gym once where it was the complete opposite, and we were taught to have the parents essentially force their 1 and 2 year olds to sit on their little carpet square. And it was so stressful for everyone. It was stressful for the teacher. It was stressful for the parent. Kids were just screaming, but that's what that program wanted them to do. And it was, not no one, but a lot of people were not enjoying themselves because that is just not a realistic expectation for a toddler. And then I came to the Little Gym and I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. We have a contained environment for them to do that and for them to be free. And there's not a lot of places that parents can take their toddler and just let them go and not hover over them and not constantly say no or, feel like something, bad is going to happen, that they have to be right there to help them all the time.
Yeah. And not to mention, I feel like there are so many places in the world where a kid is told to fall in line.
Yeah.
And that we have the bigness of our energy and our individuality and our freedom of expression stamped out of us or told us that it's bad and you guys sit still and this is a place where they can romp and be free to explore.
Yeah.
And that's been the other thing that I've noticed that has both I've loved about the Little Gym and has made me a little bit sad is how much I see adults thrusting the psychosis of adulthood onto children at an early age. And we were just communicating with some folks who used to be members and they're not members anymore. And they said, they left because they wanted to focus on more particular skill development and fast progression in real gymnastics. And I was like, okay, that makes some sense. They're probably, moving into the competitive world and they're going to, really focus on more competition oriented skill development. And I looked it up and the kid was 2.
Yeah.
I was like, the kid was 2.
The real gymnastics comes up pretty often too. Again, because, we are real gymnastics. We are taking the skills that if you were to go to a competitive program, like with your, 8, 9, 10-year-old, they would do the same skills. They've learned a foundation. And if that's what they want to do, that's great. But I think it is a perception that we have to, we have to educate that parent, right? We have to educate them why it's real gymnastics, why their kid wandering and exploring is not just them not doing anything. And, I think it can be a visual thing too, where, okay, maybe my kid they are standing in line, they are doing this, but what else are they doing? They're just sitting, they're waiting, right? So I've seen classes at other places where, okay, all the kids go sit by the wall and then one at a time they come up, do their skill, go sit down. The next kid comes up, do their skill, go sit down. Whereas here, maybe it looks a little chaotic, but we mostly have it under control, but they're moving the whole time. They're going around a circuit, right? So that instructor might not be one-on-one with them all the time. We have that particular skill of focus we work with them on one-on-one, and that's how our program's designed. But that child is getting exercise for that full 50 or 60 minutes versus spending half of their class either sitting by a wall or waiting in a line.
Yeah, totally. In the digital era, how does Little Gym think about screen-free physical activity balanced with the digital world kids live in? How have you navigated that as a parent and as a gym owner? What's the role for screens in a gymnastics world, or is there one? I'm pretty anti-screen when we come here. I don't even have screens in my lobby. I love when my kids go somewhere where they are active, they're engaged, and it is not
there are no screens. So I think that, to kind of piggyback on what you said about AI, that AI, can't take over kids' gymnastics. There's, we are in a place where I think kids do love their screens. My kids love their screens, but so parents are looking for opportunities for them to have that time when there is no screen, right? So this is it. This is one of those times. Like, they're in here, they're interacting with their peers, that socialization and the instructors, and they are getting that exercise, burning the energy, hopefully learning a bunch of skills and having a good time, and no screens involved.
It's a good word. Where do you see the brand going in the next horizon? 10 years, kids gymnastics in 10 years, any innovations coming down the pipe, or is part of the benefit that you said that it's enduring the same principles that have been true for the last 50?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's going to stay the same. I think we're going to see a lot of growth in our brand. For as long as I've been involved, one of our goals has been, as a whole, has been to have the Little Gym be a household name. We're about to go from 2 locations to 12 or 15 in Atlanta. So I think we're kind of on the verge of that. So just, having that brand recognition spread more is on the horizon for sure. I do think that we will see some changes in maybe some of our music, some of our maybe smaller parts of our curriculum and our offerings there. I'm a big fan of the Little Gym music. I love the Little Gym music. We have not had new music in many years because all of the music was made by Randy McCoy, who is no longer involved directly with the Little Gym International. And I think because of his role, and he created so much of this, that it's hard to imagine someone else doing it. But I do think that it will come up and will happen at some point. But I think it's a very it's a sensitive subject because of the passion around the program and the love everyone has for Robin and Randy and what they created, and just making sure that I think it's staying on brand with what they did, maybe some evolution, but really staying on brand with what they've created for us.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned the Little Gym being a household name.
Yeah.
When people think about the Little Gym, and specifically your locations, like, what do you want them to think about? What do you want it to be known for in Atlanta? Yeah,
I just want people to think of like how much fun their kids had when they come here. I love when I run into people. This happened recently. We were in Athens for a football game, and I ran into a former member, and their child was 12, and I was like, "You guys used to come to the Little Gym, right?" She was like, the daughter was like, "Oh my God, I love the Little Gym. I remember going to camp there." And, I just want them to have happy and fond memories of it. And, whether it's how much fun their child had, how much they learned. I have had kids that have gone on to, competitive gymnastics programs, or maybe it's the other parents that they met there and are still friends with. So I think just, having that positive association, and everyone that comes here having those positive, happy memories. And sometimes they ask about the past instructors they had. And so I think that's the main thing I would, want everyone to leave with when they eventually leave.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's our show today. As always, thank you for joining us with Macon Atlanta. If you like this episode, please give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, a share. Send it to every single person that you've ever met and have ever interacted with, and tell them to listen to Macon Atlanta and subscribe. We're talking about what makes life worth living in this AI era, how we live well. We're in conversation with Atlanta innovators and community builders. Thank you, Jane, for joining us. As always, if you have suggestions for topics, guests, things we should look into, please let me know. And I appreciate you journeying with us. Thanks.